The sun was setting slowly behind the mountains, casting the small village of La Bolsa in a warm, golden light. In the cemetery, surrounded by old cypress trees, stood Elena, a young woman in her 20s whose face bore the marks of exhaustion but also of determination. She stood in front of her parents' graves, whose bodies had been claimed by the earth years ago. With the wind brushing against her skin, she sat on the ground near the headstones and began speaking softly, as if someone on the other side could hear her. "I've done everything for you, Mom. I promise. What you left in your letters. I'm doing it," she whispered, her voice filled with hope and sorrow. "Dad never understood what it meant to us. But I do. I'm searching for what you said I'd find." A few meters away, hidden among the shadows of the trees, a man silently observed her. He was Adrian Perez, a millionaire who had come to the village looking for land to build a luxury resort. He had heard about Elena, and his curiosity led him to follow her there, not knowing why he felt such a strange connection to her. Something about her face, her fragility, drew him in. Elena continued speaking as she cleaned her mother's grave with a handkerchief. Intrigued, Adrian stepped forward, but a twig snapped under his foot. Elena quickly turned around, but she saw no one. She assumed her mind was playing tricks on her and continued to speak softly. "I know I'm not rich, but I'll do it. This will change everything." Adrian, not wanting to disturb her, took a step back, his mind swirling with questions. What was she looking for? What connection could this young woman have to the fortune he had built through hard work? He began to walk away, but before leaving, his eyes caught a glimpse of something shiny among the stones. As he moved closer, he discovered an old medallion, something Elena seemed to have dropped in her desperation. Without thinking twice, he picked it up and slipped it into his pocket. From that moment, nothing would be the same for either of them. By the time the sun rose, Elena had returned to her home, a modest wooden cabin on the outskirts of the village. Her face no longer showed sadness but a determined expression. She had spent the night wide awake, poring over the letters her mother had left behind. Letters full of secrets and clues that could lead her to a place she couldn't yet imagine. But one thing gnawed at her, the medallion she had lost at the cemetery. Adrian, now back in his office in the nearby city, felt the weight of the medallion in his pocket. That small piece of jewelry seemed to hold a story he didn't yet understand, a story that inexplicably called to him. He decided to dig deeper into Elena's family history, and what he discovered left him breathless. Elena's family had once owned an old estate that, according to historical records, had been the foundation of a hidden fortune over a century ago. The medallion, according to rumors, was the key to a treasure that no one had ever been able to find. Unbeknownst to her, Elena held the key to an immeasurable fortune. Intrigued and driven by greed, Adrian decided to approach Elena without revealing the truth. He showed up at her home under the pretense of helping her with legal paperwork for the estate. Deep down, his real intention was to gain her trust and, hopefully, uncover more about the medallion. "Elena, I've been thinking about what you said at the cemetery. What exactly are you looking for?" Adrian asked with a kind smile as he sat at the small table in her cabin. Elena, though puzzled by his visit, didn't hesitate to respond. "I'm looking for answers in my mother's letters. She left me clues to find what she never could. I know there's something important in her words. My mother always spoke of a secret, something that could change our lives." As Adrian watched her, he felt a pang of doubt. Was he doing the right thing? But his greed pushed him to press on. He needed to know more.
The rain poured heavily that night, drumming against the ground and the graves in the small cemetery of La Bolsa. Thunder rumbled across the sky, adding to the dense, foreboding atmosphere. Moonlight barely pierced through the clouds, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Elena walked slowly among the headstones, the medallion in her pocket and her mother's letter clutched tightly in her hand. The weight of both items made her feel as though she was on the verge of uncovering a secret that could change everything. It had been several days since Adrian had entered her life, and the distrust she initially felt toward him had slowly faded. Yet, something still unsettled her, as if a dark shadow hung over her. She couldn't shake the feeling that the pieces of the puzzle were coming together in a way she didn't like. The icy breeze brushed against her face as she approached her parents' graves. The cemetery's silence was unnerving, broken only by the sound of her footsteps on the wet earth. Her heart pounded in her chest, as if she were about to face something far greater than herself. When she reached the graves, Elena paused and gazed at her parent headstones, a mixture of sadness and gratitude washing over her. They had been towering figures in her life, but their untimely deaths had left a deep void. And now, in the solitude of that stormy night, she felt as though she was about to find something that could finally bring them peace, or so she hoped. Suddenly, a shadow moved among the nearby trees, and Elena tensed. At first, she thought it was a trick of the darkness and the rain, but then she heard footsteps. Firm, deliberate steps, as if someone knew exactly where they were going. Elena turned sharply, and there, just a few meters away, stood Adrian. His tall, imposing figure was silhouetted against the faint moonlight, his expression unreadable. "I thought I'd find you here," Adrian said in a deep, calm voice, laced with an air of mystery. Elena didn't respond immediately. Something stirred within her. The fact that Adrian had appeared at that precise moment, without warning, felt like more than mere coincidence. "What are you doing here, Adrian?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her attempt to mask her fear. Adrian didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a slow step forward, his movements measured, as though he were following a script only he knew. "I have something to show you, Elena," he said, pulling the medallion from his pocket, the same medallion Elena had lost. Its gleaming surface caught the moonlight, and Elena felt as though something inside her had shattered. "That medallion, where did you get it?" she demanded, her voice firmer now, though a knot tightened in her stomach. Adrian met her gaze, his eyes cold and distant. His demeanor had shifted. He was no longer the friendly, helpful man she thought she knew. He seemed like someone entirely different, someone with a darker intent. "The medallion belongs to your family. It's the key to uncovering what your mother was searching for all her life. Did you know your parents once owned a vast estate?" he asked, stepping closer as though wanting his words to sink deeply into her soul. Elena instinctively took a step back, but Adrian followed, his presence unrelenting. "I know everything about your family, Elena," Adrian continued, his voice softening into a near whisper. "This medallion, this small object, is the key to a hidden treasure, a treasure your parents could never find. But you're the heir. All you have to do is give me the medallion, and together we can unlock the secret that has been buried for generations." A sharp pang of betrayal shot through Elena. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. How could Adrian, the man she had begun to trust, say such things? "I don't know what you're after, but I'm not giving it to you. This belongs to my parents," she said firmly, gripping the medallion with both hands, holding onto it as if it were the last piece of her family she had left. Adrian watched her for a moment, as if weighing his words. Then, his expression darkened, and a cruel smile curled across his lips. "You're wrong, Elena. The medallion doesn't belong to you. You're just the final piece in this puzzle. If you give me the medallion, everything will change for you. You could have power, wealth, everything you've ever dreamed of. All you need to do is trust me." Elena shuddered at his words, a chill running down her spine. Something inside her told her there was more to this than Adrian was letting on, something far darker than money or power. He didn't just want the medallion, he wanted control over something much greater. Then Elena remembered her mother's words, written in the last letter she had found among her family's belongings. That letter, written in red ink, carried a clear message. The true treasure isn't in what you possess, but in what you leave behind. In that moment, Elena understood what she had to do. She couldn't give Adrian the medallion because it wasn't the key to fortune. It was the key to something far more profound. Her mother's legacy wasn't about money or material riches, it was about the power of the choices we make in our darkest moments. With this revelation, Elena took a step back, putting distance between herself and Adrian. The storm continued to rage around them, but something within her had ignited. "You're wrong, Adrian. I don't need your treasure," she said, her voice strong and resolute, entirely different from before. My true inheritance is far more valuable than any fortune you can imagine. And I won't let you use my family for your selfish purposes." Adrian's face twisted into a frown, his eyes flashing with anger. But before he could say another word, Elena pulled her mother's letter from her pocket and held it up in front of him. "This is the real legacy," she said firmly. "The treasure you're chasing is found in love, wisdom, and the legacy we leave for others. Not in gold, not in power. ChatGPT can make mistake."
At that moment, something inside Adrian broke. The man who had been the architect of his own fortune, the one who had built a business empire, now stood before a young woman who had understood something he had never learned. Elena, with the medallion in her hand, turned and began to walk toward the cemetery's exit, leaving Adrian behind, his face filled with frustration and a newfound understanding of what truly mattered. Elena had found peace, but Adrian remained lost. The storm raged on, but she no longer feared the darkness. Her future was clear, and her mother's legacy guided her forward, toward the true treasure that awaited her. And so, with the wind brushing her face and the moon lighting her path, Elena walked toward her destiny, leaving behind everything she had known, yet carrying with her what truly mattered: truth, peace, and love. The real treasure is not gold, but the knowledge and lessons left by those who walked before us. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe for more tales like this. Turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest stories. Share this story with your friends and reflect together on what truly matters in life.